So welcome once again to Prescription for Your Transformation, hashtag real people, hashtag real conversations. And once again, just for all those new listeners and all the old listeners, of course, as well, this platform is designed to bring to you incredible people with their voices, their solutions, their imagination, their creativity, their ways, their path, their journeys that actually can help you to your own personal success. In these words, in these conversations, you will find gems that will actually totally transform your life. And so this is what's very exciting for me to find these incredible individuals. And today is absolutely no exception. A very strong individual with an incredible background that I'm excited to bring to this platform today because he has some incredible programs and incredible opportunities for anyone who desires to change their life and go to the next level. So thank you, Dr. Mario Garcia, for joining me today.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Rademacher. It is such a joy and pleasure to honor you and your legacy and the many thousands of lives that you've helped and continue to help, and to be on this program to touch so many wonderful people.
I really do appreciate that, and the feeling is mutual. And one thing that stands out for me, because I've known you for quite some time, but Dr. Garcia is one of those solid individuals. You know what he stands for. He stands for integrity. He stands for leadership, and he stands for getting things done. And he's a no-nonsense guy when it comes down to business and helping you achieve what it is that you want to desire. So I love to talk to you today and hear some of your insights and strategies, and of course introduce your business, the Neuro Strategic Coach.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor. We have an internal saying in our coaching, peak performance, and executive programs that what we bring to our clients is a coaching no spin zone. So we have to tell it like it is in order for them to get from where they are to where they want to be.
Love it. So what does that look like? What are some of the approaches that you actually utilize whenever it is maybe, just taking individual clients? What are some of those ways that you help people engage into that part as to, going to the next level? And maybe actually let's start off with, some of your perspectives or your personal perspectives of, like, the business as a family, and detours that happen in our life. We were just talking about that briefly beforehand.
Well, it's amazing because this journey for me started back in 1992. I was at the top of my career in my United States Army military service. I had won some amazing awards because of the things that I just did, because I felt it was a calling to help people. And in 1990, I had the pleasure of being one of the 10 outstanding young people of the world and of the United States in humanitarian service and leadership, just based on some efforts and humanitarian relief projects in Puerto Rico and Jamaica and other countries. And traveling throughout this time to 56 countries and coaching and speaking and training has allowed me to, reconcile one thing: people are people. No matter where they are, what language they speak, the color of their skin, we all fall into patterns. Some of them help us, and some of them obviously give us those detours in life, give us opportunities to either go through them or stay in suffering. And we like to say that we want to help you to make sure that we help you go through it, because I've been, obviously, as any other human being, have suffered multiple losses in business, and et cetera. And I take those lessons learned both from all of those countries and the people that we've worked with in business, whether they're attorneys, business owners, psychiatrists, psychologists, or coaches. And we find out that if you get to the core of the issue and don't put a Band-Aid on it, that you're able to get so much more traction in life, in business, in relationships, and in every area of our lives.
So you mentioned something very, very key, and that is, finding out what that core issue. So in your experience, and mine as well, also being a performance strategist or a neuro strategic coach like yourself, that's one of the things that I find that most people have a challenge to even recognize that they have their issue.
It's a challenge because many people have failed to determine what their calling is. And I think it all stems from that. When you know who you are, you know what to do. There is no question. And earlier you mentioned my strength and all those things that I'm able to do. I got to tell you, it comes from my faith. It comes from my foundation in my belief in God, my creator. That doesn't necessarily have to be anyone else's belief, but it is mine. And from those strengths and values that I learned from my parents, and taking those to my children, that's the legacy that I want to see left behind. I was had the pleasure of having an interview a couple of weeks ago for another colleague, and he asked me what was my greatest joy, and how did I want to be known. And I shared with him, my grandchildren call me Papa, and I just really enjoy the role of being a father, a husband, a friend, and a grandfather. I think that's my number one calling. And everything else are roles that God has allowed me to partake of in accomplishing my mission, which is to inspire others to reach their dreams, no matter what they where they're at. Take them where they are at and move them to where they want to be.
It's interesting, and this is, obviously part of your own personal background and upbringing. But, in our conversations and what you've been sharing just now, a lot of it seems to be revolving around one key thing, and that's community, whether it's family, whether it's business. And it's probably one of the challenges that we have today is that everything seems so disconnected, so, incongruent. And it almost sounds like you're looking to bring all those connections back together so that people realize that they're not alone.
It's exactly on point. I started at 17 in the United States Army, the largest team, obviously, of warriors in America and in the world. And it was there nearly 2 decades that I really learned that concept. It became part of the fabric of my life. For example, in my first 2 years, I left home at 17 for my first assignment. They sent me to Europe, to Germany. This was post Vietnam, still during the Cold War. And I remember spending my first Christmas alone in Europe. And one of the things that really struck me was Sergeant Tommy Tucker. He was my first, what we call squad leader in the military, my first supervisor. And he took me under his wing and built that sense of team and community and family, even though he had his job to do. And most people would say, well, how on earth would you consider someone that you've just met being part of the family? It was that instant connection and his mentorship that really drove into me the fact that no matter where I went, and for the first 10 years, Bart, I got to tell you, my wife and I got married a year later after I came in the military. In our first 10 years, we transferred every 2 years from duty station to duty station. We started to create and have a nexus of families in the military that really became part of who we are in our own family. And we still maintain contact with a lot of those families today. And I think that that's what's important. From there, a church community nexus also became part of the fabric of our family, which is extremely important, if not first and foremost today, and our own, obviously, biological families, which I love dearly. I have 2 daughters and a son, and they all are married or about to be married. In one case, my son, and we have 7 beautiful grandchildren from 19 years of age all the way down to 2. And so for me, it's a joy when I go into either businesses or a practice of a physician or an attorney law firm to do what we do as work, to take the perspective of, okay, it is a business environment, but guess what? If you don't establish those internal nexus of what we call raving fans, the end result for those consumers is not going to be a pretty one. And so if we want to obviously strengthen our, whether it's our business profits or our teams, we need to look upon each and every member and see what are the strengths that they bring to the table.
So yeah, and I know that you talk about, the five shifts to win in life and business. And clearly, something that you've learned very well is integrity and leading. But there are three others that you find are really important. And I would love for you to share, those gems, those secrets that you have.
Well, sure. It's part of that optimization model of business. And we start off with whether it's in personal life coaching for an executive or coaching their business is to determine if there's clarity on what their vision is. What do they see in the future? We like to say, and I learned this from a dear friend, Dr. John Maxwell. He says, if we can anticipate the future, we will become irrelevant because leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. And so it's important to determine what is the vision of that particular leader or business owner. What is the mission? What's the why? Simon Sinek does a great job in the Golden Circle in teaching that, so we won't go into it here. But that's really step number one. What do you see? Where are you? And where do you want to be? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind? At the end of the day, if you were to die tomorrow, what would you want people to say at your funeral? Number two is having optics. I think that it's extremely important and something that I learned during my law school days back in the 90s when I was at the University of Miami. Following my graduation, I became a prosecutor. And so that process of discovery was extremely important, trying to get optics into the different data points of the case. It's the same thing in business. We need to know what are the facts. I find that a lot of our business owners don't know their numbers, don't know their people, and sometimes they don't even know themselves. And so I think that discovery is extremely important because you can't obviously evaluate what you can't measure. The third step is what we call strategy. And as a neurostrategist, I think this is an extremely important step because it's there that we can co-create that map that's going to take us from where we are to where we want to be. And without it, you really can't determine whether you're having any traction, whether your team is getting the results. But the team obviously can't know where to go if they don't have clear what that vision is. So it's part of that ensemble. It's kind of like an orchestra. The conductor obviously has his music and his piece, but everyone has to contribute, but they have to know what they're contributing towards. Which brings us to the next step, which I call issues, right? We all come into those potholes of life. I'm originally from New York City, and I like to take the train because whenever I drive, I'm bound to get into a pothole, no matter what. And in life, we have those. In 2008, I had gone through a successful career. As I mentioned, in the military, received a multitude of awards. In my first 5 years as an international coach and speaker, I had the privilege of, in 5 years, going to 45 countries and speaking to audiences from 1 to up to 5,000 during that time frame. And became a successful attorney. And at the top of my career, as an attorney, I had my own firm in Miami, won a landmark case in the Massachusetts area, in Boston, when the Big Dig collapsed. And so it seemed to me like everything was going great. Transition to that, to one of my outcomes, which was to become a judge. And in the midst of that particular race, 30 days before the election, my second daughter, Erica's only son, dies. Can you imagine? That's not a pothole. That's kind of like the Grand Canyon, because you don't expect any of your children to die, much less a grandson at the age of 2.5 years of age, when there was actually nothing particularly wrong with his health except for traditional ear infections. The reality is that it did happen 30 days before that election. I lost that election by 5,000 votes. 12 months later, my father passed. 30 days after that, Bart, my best friend and deacon in a church passed. And now we're in 2009, I had a real estate company, a title company, a mortgage company, and we did the practice area of real estate law in the firm. And guess what? 2009, everything
Yeah.
implodes.
Yeah.
So it came up on the heels of what seemed to be, complete crush. But you know what? My faith, our hope, and our family unit bounced back better. And of course, as a coach, I had traditionally kept a coach since 1992. And that's who I went to, my spiritual coach, who helped me to transition through some things. But it wasn't until January 2014, actually 3 years ago, that I went to a Tony Robbins business seminar. Didn't really want to be there because I was still, you know, hiding, trying to cover the wounds, if you will. And Tony gets up on the stage and says, "How many of you know if something happens in your personal life and it impacts everything you do to include your business?" I raised my hand like 1,250 other people did. And Tony walks off the stage, starts coming down one of the aisles, comes to my row, points right at me, says, "Sir, stand up. What's your name?" And it was divine intervention. And I owe him, my life, our family is in eternal gratitude for Tony. And it was then and there that I came to the realization that I wasn't fulfilling my calling because I had hit so many potholes during that transition, 2008, 2009, that I had masked my identity and I didn't know who I was. But right then and there, through the questions that came up through the intervention, I was able to snap onto that. And ever since, obviously, God has been great. We got everything that we lost and then some. And so we're able to help so many people by, letting them know that when life brings you an issue, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you, as Tony says. And so that brings us to the next area, which is talent. I discover so many people, and I'm sure that you have as well, that have so much potential, but they can't see what they cannot see. And that's the beauty of having a coach, because we come alongside you, and it's kind of like riding a tandem bicycle. You know, one time I was asked by a business owner, he was an attorney at a firm, large law firm. He was having some communication and conflict issues. It was hurting their growth. And he also had some physical issues. And he says, what is this about a tandem bicycle and a coach? And I said, well, just look at it this way. You're riding in the front and I'm riding in the stoker position. So it's my job to just look and see what are the blind spots that you cannot see. What strategies are you using that are disempowering you? What's the language that you're utilizing that's not helping your cause or your dream? And so that talent acquisition, that talent assessment, that talent potential is extremely what I'm looking for. Because guess what? We've all been told no at some point in our life. And I remember back in the 1980s, I was in the middle of my career in the United States Army, and I had already successfully completed officer school. I transitioned. I came in as a private in the United States Army, worked my way up through the ranks as staff sergeant, then had an opportunity to go to officer candidate school. And in 1983, the United States Army opened up what they call the aviation branch. So I said, I would like to obviously fly helicopters and airplanes. And so I took the exam. I passed the written exam. I took the physical, passed it. And when I put in my application, a couple of weeks later, I got a big no. And it threw me off. I said, I've done everything. They said, no, you don't qualify because you don't meet the height requirement. You're too short. And I go, what are you talking about, right? It threw me. Again, another pothole. I went back and spoke to one of my mentors, and they said, can you look for an exception? There's always a way. And it was like preaching to the choir, because this is what I would tell people. I was a leader at that time. I was a lieutenant. And so I went the next day immediately and went to the Army Education Center and looked out for all the regulations, and in real small fine print, I found two sentences that said you could request a waiver if you have the flight surgeon measure your extremities. There was the answer. In less than 6 months, I went to flight school, and not only was I successful in flight school, I became an aviation commander, and then the following year, I was deputy commander of the largest Army airfield in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and was able to go back to flight school for fixed wing airplanes as well, and then was fortunate enough and blessed to fly a 1-star Special Forces general in those special operations missions. So you cannot or must not let people tell you no. The dream comes alive when you go that extra step, when you feel that there's resistance and you can't do anything else. This is exactly what we do as coaches. And that's what my coach did for me.
That is amazing. What an amazing story. So basically what you're saying, when you get no, it's just not right this second, but we'll figure out when it is tomorrow.
The good book says there's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes, just like when I want to give a gift to my child and they're not ready for it, and you hold it back until they are, it's the same way. You've got to be ready and you've got to be prepared, because it may not be the right time, but you don't necessarily have to give up on your dreams. You have to look back in the rearview mirror of life and say, what is the lesson that I've learned, and not think of it as a failure, because there are no failures. It's lessons learned and what else could be possible, and create that possibility.
Yeah, what's interesting when you talk about strategies, and if you look at, let's say, strategies of something that didn't work in the past, so just because something didn't work in the past isn't a guarantee that it's not going to work in the future. So likewise, whatever did work in the past isn't a guarantee that it will work in the future. And so it's just, as you say, it's just a matter of strategies, understanding what your outcome is, having that absolute clarity, and then finding that alignment with your identity, and then pushing forward, taking that massive action and making things happen. And when it doesn't work out, you try again, try something else. And so that leads me to the next question, because a lot of people are very familiar with the term life coach. They're also familiar with the term strategies, but not necessarily neuro strategies. So tell us a little bit about, that perspective and why neuro strategies.
Well, I had the wonderful pleasure during my time after I achieved my doctorate in law, and I started to become very much interested in the aspects of health law, and was fortunate and blessed enough after my time at I was able to work through a program at Loyola University of Chicago in health law. But in between those two, after my PhD in peak performance, I was able to have a time with, at that time, it was Dr. Alan Mirsky. He was the chief of the Neuro Science Experimental Laboratory at National Institute of Mental Health. And he became my trainer and mentor in my postgraduate doctorate in neuropsychology. So that's where the neuro part comes from. Because what I discovered during those 3 years in my work with him was that we can and must control our minds. Our mind is a beautiful thing. We have the capacity to do amazing and beyond the things that we normally do. One of the things I discovered and I heard first from him was, you have the capability to self-heal about 95% of all illnesses. A lot of what we go through is stress-induced. And yes, we have that other 5%, and physicians, as you well know, have their place, and intervention is necessary. But a lot of the things that we bring upon ourselves, it's all about the mind. The mind wants to delete, distort, and generalize. We get so much information, especially our children today, as you and I have both talked about before. We see so many more kids with autism and ADD and ADHD. You figure all of these stimulus, whether it's video, audio, and everything else, comes into the mind. What do you do with that to prevent overwhelm? Well, the Creator gave us a system. The challenge is that if we don't control the system, we delete, we distort, and generalize instead of creating and designing. So what we do in Neuro Strategies is bring you that information so that you can then take care and make sure that you're driving the mind and not the mind is not driving you. It's kind of
Wow.
the simplest way I can bring it.
No, that's very well put. And I also have a background in neuro strategies as well. And as I look at your background, and I'm actually going to post it, for those who want to find out more about you. But it's very impressive, Dr. Mario. So, a professional certified coach by ICF, master neuro strategy practitioner coach, AG certified coach level 3, mental game sports coach, board certified coach, CCE, strategic intervention, and that's only like what 1/10 down the list. I thought I had a lot of credentials as a doctor, but you're pretty impressive, and I'm certainly going to post this so that people can know. Well, I have to tell you, our time is up, and I would like to invite you once again on this platform and actually talk about some specific topics and specific strategies that you utilize when you coach your clients. But before I wrap it up with my part, I'd just like the listeners to find out, number one, how they can find you and what are some of the workshops and retreats? Because you have a whole armamentarium of incredible products that are available for consumers so that they can start changing their life, mastering their life, and going to the next level.
Well, I'll just give you a few of them. First of all, they can reach us. Our website is neurostrategiccoach.com, and that's where we can be found, or on Facebook, Dr. Mario Coach, Dr. Mario Coach, or also on Twitter. And that's probably the fastest way they can get to us. As far as our products are concerned, we have a variety of products. I have a team of coaches, so we work with life coaching, if you will. We call it peak performance coaching because we also have been blessed with working with a lot of athletes, both at the amateur and elite level. I personally have been able to work with college football coaches that have risen onto the NFL, baseball hopefuls that have come into the major league. I currently coach Ironmen. I coach folks that want to get into the Spartan organization. And so we have those kinds of training programs. I do have a personal trainer who's a coach on my staff that I supervise. We have a health coach. My wife is on board. She's been my partner for almost 40 years now, April 23rd. She's a nurse by training. And I know her since she was 12 and I was 14. So she's my best friend and my partner. So she's on the team. Most of our coaches have been through International Coaching Federation training. And we have in our Neuro Strategic Coaching Institute the Global Certificate in Leadership Coaching. It's approved by the ICF, and we train coaches in this advanced program who want to become executive and or leadership coaches. My niche specifically, I work with physicians, chiropractors, attorneys, and other health professionals and business owners, CEOs. One of our other programs is our Building Champions for High Performance Teams. Excellent program. We've come into law firms for retreats, medical practices, other types of businesses, and 2, 3 days, 4 days, depending on what the need is of the actual client. So we have different types of training and seminars. They are all prepared from scratch, depending on what the needs are. We provide assessments, whether it's the Everything Disc for leaders, managers, sales, or the 5 behaviors for a outstanding team. So we're able to take you from A to Z, essentially. Our neurostrategic programs are designed to work with individuals. One of our niches, as you probably are aware, is working with individuals that have had a traumatic crisis. So I have a program that we provide for 6 months where we bring the individual to Miami for a 72-hour intense boot camp period. Women who have been sexually abused, raped, children who have gone through some traumas, veterans are near and dear to my heart with PTSD, individuals who've gone through different crises and traumas such as 9/11 or shootings. So, we work with those difficult cases that pastors, communities, and other leaders send to us. So, those are some of the wonderful things that we're doing. Last year, we had the opportunity to go to Ethiopia, so we're involved with Crisis Aid International, their feeding program for the 7.5 million starving children in Africa, their inner city kids program in St. Louis, and also training and coaching practitioners that are working with women who are rescued from illegal sexual trafficking. So our mission is very clear. We are here to obviously provide tools to individuals to make sure that their dreams come true and that they don't stop themselves, because potentially we can get in our own way, as I have many times.
Wow, I've known you for now 3 or 4 years, and I am so excited and honored today to actually find out all this about you. I didn't know this incredible man was the guy that I've been working with and talking to and having meals with, and this is really impressive. And quite frankly, this is also the purpose of this platform, to bring to this platform people like you, incredible, extraordinary individuals that have a huge impact on life, whether it's an individual person, whether they're teams, whether they're groups, or their businesses. And I know that you do a lot with corporations that do retreats and workshops, and so for anybody out there listening and wishing to try something else, reach out to Dr. Mario Garcia. He's got a wealth of experience and imagination and creativity and really strategies that will totally change your life. And so I really want to thank you for today, Dr. Mario. And I'm Dr. Bart Rademacher, prescription for your transformation, hashtag real people, hashtag real conversations. And I have an interview later tonight. I'm actually going to a art studio and delivering some new gems. But Dr. Mario, thank you. And let's plan on having another interview sometime in the very, very near future, talking about something very specific that you like people to know, and how that could potentially change their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, and I appreciate it. And the reason why you probably haven't heard some of the stories is because I'm not one that likes to talk about myself. I just shared that not to impress people, but to impress upon them that if someone from Harlem, New York City, who was a shoe shine at 9, could rise up and have all these multiple blessings and family, then anyone can do it.
And this is why this is the real people, real conversations, where we get to find the real people out there like yourself with incredible integrity, incredible power. Because the truth is, we all need people like you in our lives. So I want to thank you once again.
Thank you.